Hey, my name is Naja and today we're gonna start making a quilt. I have never made one, but I love sewing and all kinds of crafts, so I'm gonna give quilting a shot. I really like to make anything. I don't really have something specific, but I typically do baby clothes and, let me think, like bags. I make a lot of totes and purses and stuff like that. So quilting is going to be a new thing for me. I've crocheted blankets, but I've never made a quilt. So I picked out a few fabrics from Joann's and I'm just going to work with those. I don't really have a set pattern or template in mind. I think I'm just going to do a pretty generic kind of quilt since I have a lot of different fabrics. I think I have like 6 different patterns. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna show you the fabrics now, and then I'm gonna go straight into cutting. I'll be doing 4-inch squares, and I'm pretty much gonna cut squares out of all of the fabric I have of all of the patterns I chose for the quilt, just because if I have a few extra squares, it's not a bad thing because I can make more gift wrapping or whatever I decide for the extra squares with the quilt. So I have a strawberry that's on a grayish purple gingham that I thought would be cute. It's kind of a summery quilt basically. And then I have a yellow floral fabric that I like. I've got a blue gingham, which has a few different shades of blue. I have this one. I don't have that much of this one, so it would be just little pops of it, but it's kitchen utensils since I bake a lot. I have oranges. I have limes on gingham. If you're catching the theme, it's basically food. And then lastly, I also have these strawberries, and I think I'll just do only a few of these, but we'll see. In the back, I'm going to do with this floral denim. So basically the quilt is going to be the size of whatever this denim is. And I think it'll go with the front. And I got it all from Joann's, and most of it was on sale as typical of Joann's. So that's what we're working with. Here's the process of me just cutting all the squares. Took a few hours, and I ended up adding a cute pink floral fabric. Hey, so it is the next day. I'm watching a jewelry sale. Okay, so it is the next day. I cut all my squares out last night. I did like a little time lapse. So this is what I stored them in. I got this container from Michael's. So this is what we're working with. I'm gonna start laying them out. I think I'm gonna have to do it on the floor, and then that's what I'll do. Here I am after a couple hours of mapping them out. I'm not gonna lie, it does take a long time, especially because I knew I wanted it to look purposeful, and where I put the squares, I didn't want to just make them scattered, even though I did want them scattered and I didn't want them in perfect lines. So it was placing it so my brain liked the way they were laid out and looking. And I have my 17 rows down, so I just have to extend to the columns, and it ends up being a 23 by 17. So I just need to extend it out further onto the floor off the carpet. And that is all I'm explaining in this clip, really. Okay, this is after I have it mapped everywhere I liked, and I'm just explaining how it took me so long because I had to take a nap because I didn't sleep enough that night. And my dogs have affected some of the squares, so I point and you can see where if some are crooked, it's because of my dog. And yeah, so now I have to pick up all the rows so I can go ahead and sew them together. Okay, here I am attaching and creating the rows, really, and I just have to start with the first piece, put them right sides together, connect it to the second square, and then repeat that process over and over and over again to make all my rows. And I have them all organized as you saw in the video of me picking them up. I also just wanted to say that each of these rows takes 30 minutes per row. Laid all my squares out, mapped them all, then I sewed all the rows together. Now I have to connect the rows to each other, and so I'll have to iron the odd rows towards the left and the even rows towards the right. That way they'll lay flat when the seams are sewn together and it makes it less bulky. And these are the rows. These are what they look like. I had them folded up. That way I could keep them organized, and they all have their own clip and label. And then I have already sewed together. So the tutorial I'm finding, I'm gonna link it down, basically. She says sew the rows in pairs and then sew the pairs to each other. I have to go ahead and press all the rows, and I think right now I'm just doing pressing and then sewing the pair that I just pressed together, and then I'll do that for the whole thing. I've already done 1 and 2 together, and I'll show you what it looks like. So rows 1 and 2 I sewed together, and this is what they look like. I still kept the labels on them so I know which way is the correct, like up, you know, like which is the top. And so this is row 1, this is row 2, and then I flipped 2 facing so they would sew together and make sure it was the correct orientation. That way I didn't accidentally sew it upside down. I always kept the ones together. And so I just pressed 1 this way and 2 the reverse way. That way when you sew them together, it'll be a flatter seam. Okay, here's where we are as far as the rows. They're all sewed together, so I have them in pairs, and then the last row, since they're uneven, is in 3. And now I have to just connect the rows to each other. So I'm gonna do 1, 2, connected to 3, 4, and so on and so forth. And then after that, I'll connect the big blocks together. That's how I'm supposed to keep them, I guess, the most flat. So we're gonna see how it goes. Okay, so I just sewed all of the blocks together, and then I sewed the halves together, and now I have the entire face of my quilt, which is exciting. So now the hardest part is over. Yeah, famous last words, because the quilting part was for sure the hardest part for me. So yeah. Okay, so my backing is too small, and in my head, the logical thing to do was to just add extra rows since I had extra squares. So I attached quilted rows of the fabric I chose and some of the fabric that I actually decided to leave out. And I added that around the border of the back, and that way I was able to still use the backing I wanted even though it was too small, and I could just have the theme of the quilt be on the back as well. And okay, so this is after I added the extra quilted rows. Funny thing, I don't even think I needed the ones on the shorter, or on, I guess, the long edges. I really didn't even need them. I just needed on the shorter edges because it just wasn't wide enough. So that's what we ended up doing, and it worked out great. So we moved to the next step. Okay, this is actually the outfit that made me believe I could make a quilt. So at this point, I've attached the front, the 2 layers of the batting I used because it was super thin, 100% cotton. And then I added the back, and I rolled it up after I took an hour and a half pinning, and then I decided I needed a snack because that was really hard. And I thought I was done with the hard part, and little did I know this blanket was about to try to take me out. So here's the next part. Okay, here I am just sewing the blanket. This part was really hard, but once I got my method down, I had to kind of do my own thing because what I was watching online was not correlating for me. But I just followed the flowers on the grid. Okay, here's a cameo from my boyfriend, who I'm actually basically making the quilt for. He and the dogs have been testing out laying on it every time I have to put it on the ground to attach layers, sew it, trim it, whatever I have to do. If they can lay on it, they will. Okay, so I made him get up so I could just really show that I finished the trim, and there's like a weird divot in the side, but that's mostly because the dog was laying on it and it's like a fold in it. And so all the layers have been stitched together in a grid pattern. Now I just have to add the bias. Okay, so I watched a tutorial, multiple ones, and then I finally found a good one that I liked that was on using a pre-folded bias tape. I'm zooming in so you can see. So I am going to unfold it because it's folded like this. And so I'll unfold it and unfold it again, and then I'll sew, keeping this edge straight along the edge of my quilt, and then sew into this ditch. And I'm gonna go around the whole thing, and then I might record when I get to the corner. I might not, depending on the difficulty. I'll probably won't record the first one, but might record the second or third, or just link the videos I watched. Decided it would be best if a professional were to show how you were supposed to do the mitered corners, but I did get it down. I just know that sometimes my way of explaining is not the best. So this is just me doing it and then doing my trim. So I measured the length from the bottom of this top piece and then this width, and I drew a line, so I don't need to cut the bottom, I just need to cut the top. And then I'll connect them how this seam is connected, and then that should make it equal for the whole thing. And then before I clipped it, I made sure this was the right length, and the hack actually works. I can try to link a video so you can see better, because I don't trust myself to give an accurate description or tutorial. But yeah, so now it's equal, so I just have to finish doing this entire side, and then I'll work on attaching it to the back. Okay, so now all I have to do is just fold my bias tape over, and I'm gonna clip it in place, and then I'm just going to sew along the edge and try to make sure it's over the old seam. The corners, just try to make sure they're flat as possible is what I've seen. And then I'll be done and I'll be able to put it in the washer, so I'm really excited. Okay, we finally made it to the end. Okay, I can finally say I'm done with the quilt. I made my first quilt. I immediately said that I was going to never make a quilt again, and then I was requested to make a newborn quilt, but that is okay because it's gonna be teeny tiny. I will not be making another full-size quilt. I didn't know if I was gonna finish at some points. I was very stressed, and I don't know, it was a learning curve, but not a learning curve I was excited about. It was a learning curve that was kind of stressing me out, but that's okay. So we went from picking out all the samples of the fabric that I actually ended up adding to. Like, I took away this one, I added it only to the back, and then I added a couple of more different fabrics on the front, and then this is the backing. And I decided to go with an orange border because I was really making this quilt for my boyfriend because his grandmother used to make him quilts a lot. And I was like, well, I can make you a quilt. And I mean, we're both gonna use it, but he always gets hot. And so I also crochet, but he doesn't like crochet blankets because they overheat him. And Afghans, throws, whatever, that are crocheted, they get too hot. Normal blankets are too hot most of the time. So a quilt is the perfect opportunity. So I ended up using the Pellon, I think that's how you pronounce it. It's P-L-L-O-N. I got it from Joann's. And that was my batting. And I ended up using 2 layers of it because it was really lightweight. And I did the cotton one. So I think it's 100% cotton or 90-something%, but it's like the highest percentage of cotton because that's what I like to sew with, because I know that it's gonna last the longest and it's the most natural, so it's not gonna overheat you. So I decided to use that as the batting because I wanted something thin. And luckily I did get the 90-inch, a cutting of the 90-inch one, because I got 4 yards and then I got it and I'm like, this is super, super thin. So I was able to double it up to make 2 layers for the quilt. So really yesterday was kind of my final day. I trimmed everything down and I was really scared about using the bias tape because I've never used it before. But I realized it was easier for me to just go ahead and get a pre-made one. I have no shame in it. So to the lady who judged me when I called the quilting store to see if they had any, I don't care. It was gonna make my process easier, so that's what I ended up doing. And I went and got, I think I might have one more pack of it. I think it's called Rights by Singer or something like that. Yeah, okay, so I have one more pack of it. It's called Rights, and it's the double fold bias tape quilt binding. So this is the binding I used, and I chose the orange peel color. Okay, really, I didn't choose the orange peel color. I was gonna do like a more plain color, like, I don't know, like a tan or brown, like a neutral color. But everyone who's seen the quilt so far has been obsessed with the squares of the oranges. So my boyfriend was like, I think we should do orange. That's his favorite color. I brought him with me to Joann's to choose out some of the fabrics so he could choose what was gonna go where. But I kind of took creative control, or putting the whole thing together because I just let him choose a few things that would like not stress him, and then I let him choose the border. So without further ado, here is the quilt. Okay, this is, I guess, the front. I'm gonna also include pictures at the end so you can see clearly. But this is the front of the quilt. And then this is the back. I don't even know if I'm holding up the whole thing, but I'm really proud because it was really hard making a quilt. I mean, I didn't think making a quilt would be easy, but I am shocked at how hard it was in certain parts. And really it was just like, everyone thinks that sewing the squares together is the hardest part. No, it's not. It's tedious, but I don't mind. I mean, I crochet, I sew, I do calligraphy. Like, I don't mind doing tedious, long things that take a long time. You know what I mean? That doesn't bother me. Trying to fit, like going through, you'll probably see in some of the time lapses, but going through, trying to fit the blanket through the machine. Oh my God, like, cause you have to roll it and all this stuff, whatever. It was just much more difficult than I expected. So that part was really the part that was hard for me. And I understand that some of my lines are not straight. I know that on the back of it, like the denim is puffed up in some part, but that does not bother me. I made a quilt, I don't care. So it has this is the backing. And I knew the backing was too small, so I knew I would add extra strips of the quilting and it was gonna be fine. So I think the orange looks really good with all the colors. Like obviously blue and orange are complementary colors, and I love the flowers. So I actually sewed it from the back, not the front. And I used the flowers as like a grid, and I just followed the pattern of the flowers. And so it has two borders of the quilted fabric down the sides. And then this is what it looks like. I really, really like it. I'm very proud of myself. I make a lot of stuff and I don't love what I make, but this I actually do really like how I made it, and I like all the decisions I chose for it. And so you can see the orange right here. And I should have, you know, I went to Joann's and I tried to find this fabric, but I think because it's now going into fall, they don't have it anymore. It's sold out. I mean, it's a really cute fabric, so I couldn't find it, and I just decided this orange is just gonna have to be the orange we're gonna go with. I hope it looks right, and I think it looks really cute. I think it's a good pop, and it's not boring. I don't know, I think it's just cute against all the colors. And so the fabrics I ended up choosing were the strawberry gingham, lime gingham, blue gingham, oranges, these yellow flowers, and then I think that's it. Oh, sorry. And then a few of the pink squares. And then on the back, so I originally on my little swatch sheet had the kitchen utensils, but I didn't like the way it looked in the full. So I was able to add a little bit of it back here, and I really like how that came out. And I got mitered corners. Thank you to everyone with your YouTube and TikTok tutorials, because it ended up being much more simple. And that is the finished quilt. Thank you to everyone who made it this far. I really appreciate you watching. This was a labor of love. I think full on working, it was probably 2 weeks to complete it. And yeah, so my next project is going to be a baby dress and a baby outfit. Okay, a toddler dress and then a toddler's full outfit. So hopefully I'll be posting those videos next if you care to watch. And if you have any questions in the comments, feel free to leave them. All I request is that professional quilters don't come in the comments and attack me, because this is my first quilt. I've never made a quilt. I just decided I was gonna make a quilt over the summer because I bought an outfit that was quilted from Anthropologie. So please be kind, and thanks. Also, I love that I just noticed this string that has been in my hair for that whole clip, but I am not re-recording, so, you know, oh well. Here are all the pictures that I took with my quilt. I am so proud of it. I love it. It is the perfect weight for summertime when you are not trying to sweat under a blanket, but you still feel like you need something on your legs. I held it both ways so you could see how big it was and the front and the back, and then portrait shots because sorry, thumbnail is needed. And then I showed also a couple of pictures laid down on the ground. Once again, thank you for watching, and I hope you like my next sewing video.